Yeah. Thank you so much. I hope, good afternoon to everyone. I hope everybody had good lunch. So, we have esteemed guests today, and we are discussing a topic. I think it can't be a better time to discuss, real estate investments in Dubai. Every now and then, for last 100 odd days, we have been seeing developments from the Gulf, and obviously this will or will not have impact on the real estate market. So welcome guests. So I want to start with Mr. Goenka. So my first question would obviously be on the geopolitical developments that are happening in the Gulf. It's been, like I said, more than 100 days we have been seeing this conflict going on. So I'll come straight to the point. Is it impacting the real estate market in Dubai?
So very good afternoon and thank you, Gulam, for this opportunity. I'm joined by my friend who I get to see only when I come to Delhi. So thank you for bringing me here. Yes, I think, of course, India is a very large opportunity set. But again, given the CPC corridor that we have established between India and UAE, which, last year sought out to do $100 billion of trade, bilateral trade, we've already crossed $80 billion in less than a year.
Yeah.
So Indian interest in the UAE has been very high
Yeah.
at multiple levels, at the federal level, at the institutional level, and at the unit level.
Yeah.
From HNI buyers to retail buyers and so on and so forth. So coming to your point, Gulam, is the geopolitical risk a concern? Without a doubt it is. So this whole narrative of UAE and Dubai being the safest place in the world,
Yeah.
at least that cloud has got, or that sort of shield has got shattered for the time being.
Yeah.
But having said that, it is not an isolated event for that region of West Asia. It's a global impact event. It is
Yes.
affecting supply chains and energy prices, as well as supply on energy security globally. We've seen the impact in India with LPG. We've seen the impact in countries like Philippines and other places which went under martial law. We've seen the impact in Europe and also in the US. So it's clearly a global event.
Yeah.
And in such global events, obviously in any black swan event, whether it was COVID or whether it was the GFC or now, obviously capital withdraws.
Yeah.
Because obviously there is this uncertainty which crops up. That has clearly had some amount of standstill of some nature in terms of consumption of new assets.
Yeah.
But so there are two parts to this whole thing. One, are people buying? The answer is yes, people are still buying. But again, this whole impact of buying has to be deciphered because it's a very nuanced sector, has to be deciphered into multiple, which I'm happy to get into. But the good news is that the demand for rentals is still very high.
Okay.
Because it's not like people have given up their jobs and left. You have a population of 4 million.
Yes.
90% of that is expats.
Yes.
And 90% of that actually stay in rental homes.
Yes.
And you have about 300, 400,000 families which are coming in every year.
Yeah.
Now, that is all a rental demand.
Yes.
Which is why a lot of companies also have walked into the country in the last 36 months. So the rental demand has not gone down. The yields have not compressed. The vacancies have not risen. And so at least that fundamentals of consumption still remain, at least as evidenced by the rental demand. Now, in terms of speculative investments or in terms of new destinations or in terms of futuristic ideas, that obviously goes a little bit of a pause. But I don't think that people have lost their faith in UAE or West Asia entirely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So I'll take this question forward. Like you said, there's demand for rental space still. But Mr. Santosh, over to you. So we just saw some kind of easing of tensions with the signing of deal in France, with a meeting in Switzerland, and then there was some kind of hope, at least in this sector. So what do you suggest? Is it right time for an investor, Indian investor particularly, to invest in Dubai and UAE particularly? Or should the investor adopt a wait and watch policy?
Gulam, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this event. And also, it's very difficult immediately after the lunch, make everyone awake because I know it's very difficult. To answer your question, Gulam, post the West Asia crisis and the recent, the speculated agreement between US and the Iran, there is a hope that things will settle down, and everyone is hoping that as quickly if this war can be over, I think it's going to help everyone involved in this region itself. Having said that, I think Dubai or Middle East has remained a connector to the world.
Yeah.
It is one of the destinations which provides safe and secured investment returns. This could be temporary. In my opinion, I don't think, even if it extends for some time, it won't be that long. And I don't think anybody who wanted to invest should lose this opportunity. But whatever we had seen in the last 3-4 years of a return of around 30-40% kind of a return, I do not think that kind of a return will come back immediately.
Okay.
Those who wanted to invest, they need to look at the long-term investment. Like Amit said, it provides a very compelling yield returns along with the appreciation. I think that will continue. But what we had seen in the last 3-4 years, you will not expect as we go forward.
Okay, so I'll continue with you, Mr. Goenka. So, like Mr. Santosh was saying, so I'll put up a straight question to you. Having spoken about these uncertainties, having spoken about that demand, so the big question in the mind of investor is it right time to invest in Dubai?
It's a question that is to be answered depending on from what position you're looking at, okay? Now, we were discussing about India. If you're investing in India, can you invest for only 12 months or 18 months or 24 months, or should you have a medium to long-term horizon? And I think why we say that if you're investing in real estate, you should have a slightly longer horizon is because obviously there's a cycle time that takes for you to invest and exit.
Yeah.
Now, Dubai did not have that nuance. It did not have that patient capital.
Yeah.
People were churning their money and their assets very fast. To give you a case in point, Villa investments yielded 90% returns over the last 3 years. Office space returned 73% in the last 3 years.
Okay.
And residential returned between 30 to 35% in the last 3 years.
Okay.
That was what was attracting people very quickly, saying, oh, it looks like a extraordinary opportunity. But obviously, it's not sustainable, Ghulam. So what has happened, and to supplement what Santosh mentioned, is today it's because of this impetus of the war, it's now becoming a more mature market where only the more sophisticated investors should go. Like they say in India, do your research, look at the location, look at the developer. Same things will now start applying to the UAE, which means you'll have to be very picky about investing into specific micro markets only. You cannot go into, in my view, Ras Al Khaimah today. You should not be going into Dubai South. You should not be going into Dubai Land or even a JVC. Dubai South was being built because of the new airport.
Yeah.
Ras Al Khaimah because of the new casino.
Yes.
And so those stories, because they're going to get pushed back, and they're getting overbuilt any which ways because of those stories. I think those become areas of caution. But key areas, downtown, Business Bay, Marina, Palm, I think those are prime destinations which will continue. It's like saying if you invest in South Mumbai, will you lose money, right? Or will you not make? So it's like that, South Mumbai. When I remember when Vinod Khanna bought NCP apartments at 50,000 rupees a square foot some 15 years back, everybody was shocked. What the hell happened?
Yeah.
Today, 2 lakh rupees a square foot, people are not shocked.
Yes.
Right? So I think that's the trajectory that prime assets take in any country, in any city. The same thing is now being witnessed. It's more mature. So now, obviously, if you're an investor, you have to decide, A, are you willing to stay out for 3 to 5 years? Second, can you now selectively pick opportunities? And I think it's a better time to come in because I've been investing for the last 2 years. We put out almost some 2,000 crores of investments in the last 18 months alone. And this year, we decided to actually double it and not wait. Because I'm getting three pronged opportunities or advantages. The first is that because the speculative buyers have exited, or there are a lot of wait and watch buyers, I'm getting better deals. There's a need for liquidity,
Yeah.
and hence I can structure my investment to suit my cash flows or to suit my requirement. And third, I can be very selective about which project and which micro market I can get into.
Yeah.
Which basically means while I'm earning a 7-8% return, I'm looking at least getting another, a 7, 15, 16, 17% upside on my capital because of the discounts which I'm getting today. And
Yeah.
because of the financial structure I'm getting today, which means it's no longer a 30-35% market, which people
Yeah.
are assuming, but still a dollarized 20-25% annualized
Okay.
market, which is not bad. It's very hard to make that returns even in speculative developments. So, net, I think it's the great time to
Okay.
look at that market because when there is, see, it's like this when you, in COVID, if you threw a stone on any stock and you bought it, you would have already doubled it
Double it
in
by
2
now.
years.
Yeah.
So you're seeing similar situations where any black swan event throws up such huge opportunities for the short term. So I'll quote Goldman Sachs report, which monitors UAE very closely. They have a UAE reality coverage report, which says that the 4 main listed companies in the UAE, Emaar, Dubai Holdings, they will actually grow their valuation from what they've dropped to at least by 60% in the next 12 months because of the sales velocity
Yeah.
that they're still seeing and the profits they're still booking.
Yeah.
Number two, if you see that if you see the period, the first quarter, of course, was great because January and February were great. But if you see again the Goldman Sachs report, which actually tracked volumes from 1st March to end of April, 8 weeks, volumes dipped by only 15%.
Okay.
But the price went up by 7%.
Quarter to quarter.
I'm talking about the period. So if I talk quarter on quarter, of course, because the March quarter was great, because
Okay.
Jan Feb being great, so it was
Okay.
31% higher quarter on quarter compared to last
Yeah.
year. But if I look at the peak of the conflict
Okay,
period,
peak.
which is March and April alone, for
Yeah.
those 8 weeks,
Yeah.
the report which got published in end of May, early June, actually says that the price went up by 7%, net.
Yes.
Overall,
There was a
which
neat
means that because most of the investors who've gone in are unlevered,
Okay.
they're cash buyers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Second is that the market is very deep and very big. India is a $450 billion real estate sector. UAE is an $850 billion sector.
Okay.
It's almost 2x.
2x.
We sell close to 4 lakh homes last year,
Yeah.
valued at about 5 lakh crores. Last year, UAE sold 15 lakh crores of inventory of about 200,000. So, all that sales that has happened is all cash buying.
Oh.
And these are not desperate buyers who've levered, have a leverage issue, need to exit because they can't pay their loans. They put their money, they've invested it, and they're waiting.
Yeah.
They have no pressure. They have no pain.
Okay. Interesting.
They're happy to play this out for the next 12 months. So there are pockets of opportunity that emerge. So
Yeah.
any developer with a very large portfolio of development whose need for liquidity is offering discounts.
Okay.
Also, we're seeing very selective pockets because local business people or local diaspora which owned assets and having business cash flow issues are also secondary sellers. So there are pockets of opportunity, Ghulam, which are coming in, which are very interesting. So if you have a short seller, immediately go and buy.
Go and buy. Okay. Thank you so much,
Just
Mr.
to add,
Goenka.
Ghulam,
Yeah,
what
please.
Amit has mentioned, I think if you look at the data, in the last 3 months, from March to June means I would say maybe around 20th of June, 26% of the transaction which has happened in Dubai is being bought by Indians.
Indian investors.
26% has been. So
One
you can
fourth
see the opportunity still. It could be because, there is a great opportunities which is coming up. Maybe there is a price correction which is happening. So Indians are definitely looking at this opportunity and keep on investing. So that is the benefit of, the Indians investing in Middle East and Dubai.
Yeah. So thank you for this data point, and I could say with confidence that I can vouch for Anurag data. Anybody who has written or done real estate has his email. Every day we get a data point from you. And I'm continuing with you, Mr. Santosh. So who is a real ideal Dubai investor from India? Can you profile it for us?
I think maybe Amit will be in a position, but this is, Amit has already answered. It is the corporates, you know, those who are coming into India. These are the HNIs,
HNIs,
high
yeah.
net worth individuals.
NRIs.
There are celebrities, you know, who are going
Yeah,
from India
yeah.
and investing in India. And also, I think there are, you know, these institutional investors, they still looking at the opportunities, even though some of them have withdrawn, looking at the opportunities which is available in the US market. But I don't think anybody can avoid this market.
Yeah.
So everyone who is looking at great opportunities, especially looking at the double, you know, digit yield, will be looking for this kind of an opportunity.
Oh, I appreciate. So,
And
Mr.
so what has
Bhatt,
changed, Gulam, is that, you know, a lot of smaller investors were lured by this 1% payment plan,
okay.
which means I could buy a 2 crore property
Yeah.
and I could keep on paying 2 lakhs every month.
Yeah.
And that was very comfortable for me. It was
Yeah.
well within my LRS limit.
Yeah.
I could have a property to show for.
Yeah.
And by the time I invested the first 10 lakhs,
Yes.
that property of 2 crores was already trading at 2.4 crores.
Okay.
So effectively, I was seeing 2x on my money on my 20 lakh investment.
Oh, interesting.
I think that is not happening anymore. Okay? So it is not for that 1% buyer. It is not for the savings investor. It is not for the guy who's saying, let me go and start parking 2 lakhs every month into Dubai and hope that that construction will finish in 3 years and therefore I'll be able to flip my asset. It is always for the fundamental buyer, because remember that typically the ticket size is usually 1.5 to 2 million dirhams.
Yeah.
Which means if you don't have 4-5 crore rupees of liquidity to invest,
Yeah. So
which means as a couple or as two people you cannot send that money out, I think you should stay out.
okay.
I know a lot of people, including friends within your fraternity, in the journalist community, who said, Amit, I've invested now 40 lakh rupees in Russell Kemma, what do I do? I'm like,
So
you
what
know,
is the minimum investment horizon, just to add on?
I mean, see, I would say it has typically been 24 months to 36 months, because we are in this uncertainty period. And the problem of this uncertainty is not just this conflict, but it's the disruption of supply chain.
Supply chain.
So, for example, 70,000 units were to be delivered in 2025-26. They're not getting delivered. 75% of inventory is delayed. The casino is delayed by 1 year. Can you imagine where there is already $25 billion riding, that's delayed by 1 year, and then you can imagine the cost, that is the cost of delay. The input prices have gone up tremendously. You may imagine that this is a desert country but doesn't use that sand for construction, right?
Yes.
Some people say, why it's a desert? Why? Sand has become 200% more expensive.
Yes.
You're not getting labor, you're not getting materials, because they import a lot of things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So the bigger problem today is that under construction projects are facing two challenges. One is their completion period and the input costs. Now that obviously makes it very difficult for a person who's made a very tight calculation that I will remit money for 2.5 years, I will sell it, I will exit it,
Okay.
because I need to keep on paying that 1%.
Yeah.
And the bigger problem they're facing is that they're still called to pay that 1% despite that construction not happening at that pace and the project getting delayed, which means the entire math has gone for a toss.
Okay.
You know, so it should never be in that tight speculative zone where you're trying to say, oh, this is exactly how this whole thing will work. It's not a perfect math.
Okay. Okay.
The fundamentals are there. You will make great money, but you need to be patient for 3 to 5 years, or I would say not 5 years so much, but maybe 3 to 4 years.
So just from the investor's perspective, you know, investors invest at many places, domestic and
Of course.
overseas. What percentage of the investor's portfolio, investment portfolio, should be in overseas, not just Dubai, maybe, you know, other markets also?
He's got
Mr.
offices all over the world.
Before, you know, I answer that question, Gulam, you know, I just wanted to add one more data point, you know. The average price of the buying which used to take place in Dubai was on an average around 2 million dirhams.
Dirhams,
That used to be the average. But in the last 3-4
1.5.
months, it has gone down to 1.2 million.
1.2? Oh, I thought
1.2 million dirhams. Primarily because the buyers are now the actual users, the end users.
Okay.
And there is a demand for the affordable housing even in Dubai.
Dubai, okay.
So that is a big shift which is happening, and that's what I see as the market goes forward and there will be a demand from a genuine buyers. Because till now, the investors were playing the game in that speculative market. Secondly, to answer your question, how much percentage of your investment should be your overseas investment? It again depends upon individual to individual, but I would say at least 30 to 40% of your investment could be. It is again, it's not just the overseas investment. I would say it should be a combination of both on the income yielding properties where you will get a return on a consistent basis, and also some on the appreciation side.
See, what's happening is that, we've seen our rupee depreciate very rapidly in the last 6 months. And that also means that there is now a thought process, even within the HNI or upper income category, to look at dollarized income. We've seen how people have made money on SpaceX, those who invested last year. So I think there is increasingly an idea that we must have a dollar exposure in our portfolio. Everything cannot be rupee.
Yeah.
The same thing I'm seeing in the UAE. People saying, I don't want all dirham exposure, I want INR exposure. So I've seen this cross-border, diversification thought. But I think that's a good point because, again, depending upon your risk appetite, right? If you're a fixed income guy, you need regular returns. To if you're a compounding person, which is looking at equity plays, to whether you're a hard asset-backed person. But I think a dollar exposure in general of between 15 to 30% is very healthy.
Okay.
Because not only, for example, if you're just earning a yield, and why we talk about UAE? Because it's the easiest location to go and invest from a regulation perspective, from a compliance perspective, from a ticket size perspective. You cannot buy a 3 crore property in London very easily, or even in Singapore very easily, or in the US or any other global markets. So it's most affordable in terms of dollar, and it's dollar pegged.
Yeah.
Unlike in London or unlike in Singapore, it's dollar pegged. Yeah. So you know that you'll have a currency gain of about 5% a year.
Okay.
Rupee will depreciate 4-5% a year. Plus, you have the highest yield if you buy a yielding asset of 7-odd%. So that 7% plus 5%, you are looking at 12% annual return in dollar terms alone, without having the incidence of tax overseas.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if I earn anywhere else, 12%, India, we don't make 12% yield on anything.
Yeah.
And even if you did, you would pay 30% tax.
Taxes, yeah. So
which
I
means,
come to that.
Which means that effectively a 7% yield there is equivalent to a 10% yield in India.
Okay.
Pre-tax. You're getting now 12% yield in the UAE, which is post-tax.
Yeah.
Right? So that itself makes it a very compelling allocation of some capital.
Okay.
And therefore, I think a 15 to 30% allocation is a good allocation, which is the reason why, we were Indian investors for the last 15 years. 3 years ago, we decided to diversify in the UAE and looked at dollarized income.
Yeah.
And that has done brilliantly for us, I must say. We've earned 30% a year on ready inventory, rented assets.
Okay. So, like you were saying about taxes, you mentioned taxes. Santosh, what if I have, as an investor, rupees 2 crore and I wanted to invest in real estate. So, given the tax structure in UAE, which is literally zero, but tax structure in India, which is like 30%. So, would I invest in UAE to make more yields or invest it in Gurgaon or Noida? So, what do you suggest? What is the right way to do it?
So it again depends upon your interest. It's your usage, and also then looking at what sort of a return you are expecting. If your need is there, then you invest in India only, because your first home has to be always within your local destination. But you wanted to invest outside of India for a better return, I think it's a great market. I think your 40 to 50% of allocation can be, like Amit mentioned, there is a great amount of dollar appreciation, which is also going to get, and also the tax benefit which you are going to get if you are investing in Dubai. But those are the benefit which you are getting. But it again depends upon the requirement of an individual. I would still prefer having a global risk everywhere.
Okay.
I think India is still the best destination, considering the returns which you are getting today, both on the appreciation as well as on the income yielding returns. I think India is still be the best place.
Okay, so so I'll come back to the geopolitical uncertainties. With last 2-3 months of these uncertainties, are there any lessons for the investor before investing in real estate, especially in Dubai?
No, certainly. I think people get carried away by these narratives, and which is why I alluded to this 1% plan, right? Now, I think it's important to understand what is it that is one really chasing and what is it one that is underwriting. So, if you're chasing yield, then there's no point of going for this 1% plan and under construction projects, because you're taking the same risk that you'd be taking in under construction projects in anywhere in the world,
Anywhere in the world?
but a greater risk in the UAE than in India, because both have RERA, of course, and both are very, very strongly regulated by RERA. But today, India has seen a huge amount of consolidation, and it has a very deep history of development. And micro markets are very strong, and it's self-consumption based, which means it's very easy for you to exit your deal because there is someone who's willing to invest.
Yeah.
It's a consumption economy. India is a consumption economy. We don't have global investors coming and speculatively buying and selling and all of that. UAE is a investment economy, which means that consumption is there, but bulk of the people who bought are investors. Of course, buyers are, like he said, there is now a transition also for self-consumption, with in the current environment, that let me just own my home if I have to stay here forever. But because of that, you have to be aware that you are running a higher risk in under construction projects than you are running in India. Okay? And again, I'm talking like to like, right? Because you're talking only of good, great, branded developers generally. The problem with that is that the number of good, great, branded developers in the UAE is very small. There are almost 5,000 developers that started, new developers that walked into UAE and started projects in the last year alone, who had zero idea of how to do business in the UAE. Now, that's a very high risk zone, right?
Yes.
Most of our developers who even come here have had a good 10, 20, 30, 40 year history of doing business. They know how to develop it. They're brand conscious. They're funded by global capital. The developers there are not funded at all. Banks don't give them money. Private equity doesn't give them money. They're only depending on investor sales.
Okay.
That makes it very risky, because if the investor sales are not happening, how will you finish your project? It's all based on off-plan.
Okay.
So therefore, under construction is a high-risk area. But if you do it with an Emaar, you do it with Dubai Holdings, you do it with Nakheel, you do it with Arada, or with some of the largest boys, you're pretty okay. Because they're government-backed, well-funded, don't necessarily have to depend on that. They have got a great brand, all of that. So that makes it great for under construction, which most people have not, because they found cheaper options. Indians generally like to bargain. Let me buy the cheapest in that. Let me pay 1%. That's a risky idea. Other thing, like we talked about yield, is there are good options for you to enter into a 7%, 8% yielding asset with an upside.
Okay.
That is the safest thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay. It will not give you that mental math of I've doubled my money because I paid 10% of the money, but the property price went up by 10%, so I've already doubled my money. You will not get that, mental high on paper.
That's true. Yeah.
But you get real returns.
Yeah. So, Mr. Santosh, like we started this discussion with the fact that Dubai is the most preferred, one of the most preferred destinations for real estate investment. So, looking ahead by 2030, say, so do we see Dubai continuing to be in that category, or do we see other markets, coming up for Indian investors?
I think I do hope that Dubai will continue to give the return, because there are 2-3 reasons are there.
Yeah.
One, the dependency on the oil is less now, and
Yeah.
it is becoming non-oil producing country,
Country, yeah,
wherein
yeah.
tourism is getting, and plus, many other manufacturing things are also happening. That gives the fundamentally a strong economic foundation.
Yeah.
That's the one reason. I think secondly, because of the connectivity to the global market,
Yes.
that is also another advantage which Dubai holds. So I think because of which definitely the investors or any large investors would continue to invest and look at their operations from Dubai. And third, which in my opinion, which is very, very strong from an Indian perspective, because a lot of investment from India, because of the convenience and also because of the tax structure going into Dubai. I think that will definitely will benefit and put an impetus to the growth of Dubai market as we go forward. I do not see any kind of a risk unless there is something drastically happens.
So I wanted to conclude by one last question. It's again from the investor's point of view. Say, for example, an investor has rupees 5 crore, like an Indian investor, and he wants to invest somewhere in the Gulf, maybe Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Sharjah. So how would any of you can answer, or both of you can answer, what would you suggest? How much would that investor invest in Dubai real estate, and what would he buy? Which inventory?
I think in terms of if you're looking at GCC as a whole,
Yeah,
the only real option is UAE.
UAE.
Because other GCC countries are not very open to global business and global sales.
Yeah.
They're fairly closed still. Like Oman is going through Omanization.
Yes.
It's been, getting expats to leave the country. Saudi has pockets of growth, but because of MBS, but it's still not a investment friendly for every retail investor.
Yeah.
Institutional investors are going in cautiously, but it's still not open for everyone. So, for all practical purposes, within the GCC, UAE is the only option. The two best Emirates are Abu Dhabi first, UAE second.
Okay.
Abu Dhabi is the capital of capital.
Yeah.
You've seen Disney coming there. All the downturn has been weathered by Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi, for the first time in the last 18 to 24 months, has opened itself for global tourism, global influx. They were not open to global influx. They're saying, we have all the money, why do we need anyone to come and stay with us? Today, they are accelerating at a great speed. So if you see, the largest gains have actually been made in Abu Dhabi apartments and Abu Dhabi villas. Because, that's really where the acceleration of the economy is happening. So if you see, NASA program is in Abu Dhabi, Disneyland is now going to get up in Abu Dhabi. We have got drone manufacturing. The largest Make in UAE conference happened last month in Abu Dhabi. And the amount of money that they're putting to ensure that people actually come to Abu Dhabi, stay in Abu Dhabi, invest there, manufacture there, do technology there. EDGM is accelerating. So that's made it one of the fastest growing because they're able to put money behind you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So which is why it's the fastest growing economy, and because of which I think the growth has been higher than UAE in Dubai, because Dubai doesn't have its own money.
Yeah.
It's all global money. Whereas Abu Dhabi has its own money. So therefore, that's been so I would put some money in Abu Dhabi. And again, Abu Dhabi has only institutional developers. They've not allowed all these outside developers to come and develop.
Okay.
After many years, Soba got a chance
Yes.
to go to Abu Dhabi and develop. Otherwise, it was only the government players.
Government players.
Which is obviously very safe. And that's what they want. They said, well, if Soba is now strong balance sheet, we'll allow Soba to come.
Yeah.
So Abu Dhabi is the safest, followed by in Dubai also there are certain pockets. So I would put some amount of money there between those two. Between asset classes, I would say within yielding, the number one is office.
Office spaces.
Absolutely. The number two is apartments.
Yeah. Apartments.
Or villas.
Okay.
Now, because it's only 5 crores, you can't do villa. But you can do a small office and a regional apartment. Both of which will give you 7 to 8%. Again, you have to decide the micro market in which, but office is not a problem because only 2-3 locations where offices actually work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the best asset class today because there's only 5% office available against a demand of 15%. So it's in great short supply.
Okay. Interesting.
And office prices have, as I said, has given 93% upside. Right? So, sorry, 73% upside. So that's a very strong asset class followed by apartments. So I would invest my money into these two asset classes, or invest with, or go through a manager like us who does this for a living. Because
Okay,
that's
he
what we
can
do, right?
categorize
We
it.
buy ready assets, we will get high yields, we generate high returns. Like I said, I'm generating 30% returns. So if you do not have the ability to actually go frequently, monitor it, collect it, even if you have an agency to do it for you, but if you're not a frequent traveler, because in property you need to have the visibility of your asset,
Yeah,
right? It's not a security you can keep in demat,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You have to have a physical verification from time to time. So if you're a frequent traveler, you can do that. If you're not, then go through a manager or a professional who's doing it for a living. You asked about any other country. I'm actually betting on UK, strangely,
Okay, okay.
because it's seen a very huge exodus of money. You've seen the political crisis in UK,
Yeah, the
uh,
minister changing.
but UK is still the center of Europe. For London is still the center of Europe for all practical purposes. Businesses are still there. Now, what has happened is that with the Russian money going out because of all these sanctions post the war, there's been a very large amount of fire sales that have happened. People willing to sell good assets for cheap, especially in the industrial warehousing and residential side, where again there is no buyer,
Yeah,
but the rental is still very attractive.
rentals.
So, like Dubai, where the rent is 7-8%, the rents there also can be 7-9% in pound terms,
Okay.
with the upside. And because the supply chain is still very strong, I'm betting on industrial warehousing and small residential in and around central London or in zone 2 in these asset classes. So I would put some money there, because the thing with the London market is that it's a very mature market.
Okay.
And even if it sees a downturn, it catches up very quickly. So it always has an upside, because like India, it's a very mature market. Global, Europeans love to go and live there. Arabs love to go and live there. Africans love to go and live there. So despite all of the issues that it's got plagued, including issues of health and security, but it's still a very fundamentally strong market.
Yeah.
So it's going through a downturn, but the downturn is when you should be getting in.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Goenka. I think the key takeaway from this session is, if you want to invest, Abu Dhabi is the place. Office space, apartments, and villas. And if you want to move beyond Abu Dhabi, London is the place where you should invest. Thank you, Mr. Goenka, and thank you, Mr. Santosh Kumar, for these comments. Thank you so much.